Okay, so as you've all heard about the news, Eternals right now seems to be the worst Marvel movie according to critics. Rotten Tomatoes gave it like around a
It's at
45%,
49 right now. 49%.
49%, which we've all watched Eternals right now, and we think that's sort of kind of ridiculous comparing to movies like Captain Marvel or World's Dark World. That being said, we definitely do have certain things to address. So we're gonna go and address the criticism, see where the critics are coming from, and then we're just gonna put our opinions and why we think that they're kind of overblowing this shit.
Yeah, and again, this is like the critics' consensus, not just like regular moviegoers. So, because the user score is not bad.
Yeah, the audience rating as it is right now is at 84%. So audiences seem to be liking the movie overall. So, but I think one of the things that, going into it, the critic score was a big deal. The critic score obviously was coming out before the audience score because critics were seeing it first. And so I was going in a little bit apprehensive. I was like, I'm curious how I'm gonna feel about this because obviously we know that, based on past experiences, the audience score and the critic score can be very different.
Yeah.
So I was kind of going in not necessarily expecting the most, but also I wasn't expecting it to be terrible at the same time. Basically, as I walked out of the movie, I understood where some critics would come out disliking the movie, but at the same time, I don't necessarily. I enjoyed the movie overall, even though there were a lot of stuff that were some problems.
There's a lot of issues.
So I get it. I get it. Basically.
Yeah, and it's good to address the criticism so that, this franchise, these characters, whatever stories we see from them in the future, can be better. Mm-hmm. So, and hopefully, Marvel takes a look at Eternals and kind of like learns from it. Because there's like some obvious stuff that we saw in the film that like we disliked that we were like, okay, I see where the critics are coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any specific criticisms? Because I think I have ideas of one thing that I can see where they didn't like.
Well, this is one that kind of encapsulates like the grand scheme. One of this critic wrote, "I wish somebody would give a map to the exit the Marvel universe at some point. I felt like I was lost in a made up world I did not particularly care about."
Okay, hold up. I'm kind of confused. What does this guy mean by lost? Because I don't think the movie was hard to follow or anything.
I think I agree. It wasn't hard to follow, but there was a lot of setup. Like there was a lot of extra world building, which is weird in like the 20-something movie of the
Yeah.
Marvel universe.
Yeah.
There was a ton of world building that this movie was focused on. And so I kind of understand that idea of like, oh, we already have this established world and now we're learning all these new things.
Yeah.
And it kind of feels like, oh, this is just like a made up thing that I don't necessarily care about as much.
This reminds me of like halfway through the film, there's this really long sequence and it's just exposition.
Yeah.
And it's that, I was like, person next to me was like, dude, this is like the longest thing I've ever seen. And it's like, if that's the setup for Celestials, like it's a little bit of like a letdown, right? Because it's like, we know that things are going to go cosmic. And if this is our first introduction to it, it's like a little bit of a miss for a lot of people. And I think maybe it's kind of connecting to that, like, oh, at this point, this is not the Marvel universe that we've seen before. Like now that it's getting bigger, and this is our introduction, like I can see how like some people can get like quote unquote lost.
And oddly enough, it feels like as the MCU is trying to expand its universe, it's almost causing the fan base to shrink. Because I feel like the more people who would be interested in Marvel movies is going to decline, the more cosmic they get with it. Because one of the things that we talked about was, why does something like Falcon and Winter Soldier matter now that we're talking about gods creating planets and
even like
harvesting humans?
Even like Spider-Man's Peter Parker's problems, like who cares?
Yeah,
if Celestials are like farming these planets, like nothing matters.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I definitely do think it's always cool to see heroes and their own personal problems and how they deal with it. I think with this movie, the biggest problem with all of it is just the cohesiveness. Because, like, for example, we know that I forgot the guy who can mind control people, right?
Druid.
Druid. So we know that that guy, he rebelled against the mom and saying that we should take initiative.
The mom.
I call her the mom.
Ajax.
Ajax. She was basically their mom. They call her
Salma
mom.
Hayek
Yeah,
is
they did call
mommy.
her.
They basically call her mom, right?
Yeah.
So we know that he was like, well, I'm against what you guys is doing. I want to take control of the people. Okay, good. My question is, what was he doing of all those wars that was going on? Like,
Yeah.
why did he not mind control when Thanos was coming in?
And that was
like,
the thing. Like, there were a lot of cool stuff. Like, that sequence with Druid rebelling against Ajax was probably one of the best in the movie. But then they didn't really carry it forward. Like, I can't... I feel like if they had kind of taken that to its full extent, it would have been so much better. But they were just like, oh, no, he just stayed there with the same...
Exactly. It just made no sense to me that how did he not interfere in any of the wars that were going on in the world?
Yeah.
Because for some reason he obeyed, my God, I can't even say her name right.
Ajax.
Yeah, Ajax there, but everything else, I rebel you for one scene. It just,
Yeah.
stuff like that, that kills my suspense of disbelief. Another thing that really killed my suspense of disbelief was Sprite's problem. Because Sprite had this problem where she felt like she's always a kid, right? Which... I mean, it's I can see the issue, but it's like you can turn into anything.
I think she just makes herself look like something. She doesn't actually turn into it. So it's
She's
like,
always, her actual physical, like, eternal body is like a child.
Okay, I get that, but like the point is, she can shapeshift. I'm pretty sure, if I'm correct.
I think it's just like she controls how you see things, but she doesn't actually shapeshift.
she doesn't actually shapeshift.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
No,
Well,
it's
that
all
that's
it's
the
all
thing.
illusions.
it's all
Yeah.
illusion.
But the fact that that's not clear is like, well, that's another thing.
Yeah, that was my thing, because it's like if you could just do that, then why do you have an issue? I mean, you're eternal anyway. It's like you're going to always be the same. So shapeshifting a little bit. It just,
Mystique isn't always looking like a human, so
it's
you know.
it's just I just felt like that problem was just so petty for me, and it kind of goes back to a big thing with these characters that I didn't really care for most of these characters, to be honest.
That's an interesting thing. I think that I felt that a lot when Ajax dies at the early part of the movie. I was like, oh, I mean, I feel like I should be sad, but
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
And then I guess we get the backstory that kind of makes that death a little bit more
Yeah.
significant later on in the film.
Yeah.
But like at that point, I'm like, oh, okay, I guess one of them died. I didn't know that any of them could die, but one of them died. Okay.
It's hard with like a huge ensemble cast
That's
like that.
true.
It's almost too ambitious. The whole premise, the whole idea, but especially the cast, because it's like you need to like write stuff in there to make us like them. And it's, Marvel has a formula where it's like it's worked for like smaller groups. Like, I mean, look at Guardians, right?
Yeah.
But this is a lot of people.
Yeah,
And then like
exactly.
a couple of them are dying, and it's like we only spent like a couple minutes with them. So how are we supposed to feel? And I definitely like some of the interactions between the characters. Like I was getting attached to like this person and that person. But ultimately it wasn't enough time with them for me to feel like the weight of like some people's deaths. Because like 3 of the Eternals died, right? Or am I tripping?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Icarus.
Gilgamesh and Icarus.
Gilgamesh
Icarus's death
and
was the most.
Okay, that was the most dumbest death. It's funny because in Shang-Chi, we were talking about how we felt like Marvel doesn't want to give redemption arcs. This is a good example where he had no reason to die.
Yeah.
There is no reason why this guy should die, but he just like, let me just go to the
Let
sun.
me just kill myself.
I'm
because-
mad.
Oh, and it was
Yeah.
such a cliche. Okay, we're gonna make Icarus die by flying into the sun.
I get the point was supposed to be like, because he always saw that was his purpose, so now he feels like he has no purpose. But for him to just die, that's his way of dealing with it.
That's
Just-
a good point. Like the thing with Shang-Chi, they had the same problem of like they don't want to give redemption arcs to the villain of their story. And with Icarus, it was like in the movie I felt good because it seemed like they were doing that. They were giving him a redemption arc towards the end when he was, in tears in front of Circe. But then they kind of just threw that all away by, okay, now he just has to go kill himself.
It's
Yeah.
crazy because the performances are actually really good
Yeah.
in this film. I mean, not just emotionally, but like physically. Like there were some great fight scenes.
Yeah,
right?
exactly,
Angelina Jolie.
exactly.
There was
But a lot of
exactly.
it is
looks good.
a lot of it is like undermined by the writing, and it's like some of these people too were really great in the beginning, and at the end, and I'm like, am I supposed to like this person? And that's like Sprite and Kingo, namely, where
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if I like these guys because Sprite tried to freaking kill Cersei and Kingo like walked off like before the end of
he
the
just
film.
left for
It's
no
like
reason.
I don't know if I like these guys, and at the end they're like all buddy buddy, and I was like, this is they need to pay. Like what's going on here? Like
Exactly.
this, they kind of experienced no
Exactly.
repercussions from this, and Icarus killed himself, but these guys are okay.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like
I don't know.
Yeah.
there's a lot of choices that don't make sense in the storytelling, in the
Yeah.
writing, and it sucks because like I think there's a lot of growing pains because I think Chloe Zhao has like a really specific style, and it couldn't really show through outside of the cinematography
Yeah.
because at the end of the day it was formulaic.
Yeah.
Right.
It was the Marvel formula.
It is. I think again, going with the critics' problem, it's just cohesiveness, right?
Yeah.
That's really what it is. Like, movies have a certain structure, so therefore, when they see the structure off, things like you can't care for characters, stuff being built, things being rushed, all that stuff, that ruins it for the critics' experience. That being said, even though that's the critics' experience, we also have to take in our personal enjoyment.
Yeah.
Because I definitely think, again, comparing to Dark World, comparing to Captain Marvel, even if you want to say those are more cohesively, synced, I definitely enjoy this movie a lot more. I saw a lot of potential with the superheroes and superpowers, and I think the
Yeah.
best moments when they're all together on screen.
For sure.
Yeah.
One last thing that I want to mention, just as far as like on the critic side, is the deviant villain.
Yeah.
I think that was a wasted opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I
The
think-
fact that we didn't even mention him, we probably just like forgot about him.
Yeah, we just
Why was he
forgot
there
about him
at the end?
It should have been because he was shaping up to be a really interesting, like fascinating potential villain.
He was cool.
down the line, but I think they killed him too early, and
Yeah.
it was like, oh man, okay, I guess.
they-
but yeah, going back to what you said, the critics, I get the criticisms of the critics. At the same time, there's still a lot to like in this movie. There's still a lot to enjoy. Like visually speaking, everything looks really good. The fight scenes are really good, especially for Marvel movies. I really enjoyed the fight scenes, the unique creativeness between their different fight styles in the Eternals. I think was really cool. Everything looked grand, like their spaceship and all of that stuff.
Practical sets.
The sets were really good. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to enjoy. I think that it's also setting up for other stuff. Obviously, it's a Marvel movie, so we'll see how that goes. But there's definitely a lot to enjoy in this movie. So I get why audiences, right now, as it stands, are majority in favor of the movie. Whereas, I can also see why critics are not.
And I mean, I think there's like, we're kind of in an adjustment period too, because we're going into the cosmic phase. I think people are already kind of a little like confused about the direction of things. So this movie, on top of that, kind of was just a recipe for these criticisms.
We're a far cry from Tony Stark building a robot out of scraps.
Yeah. But again, it goes back to the whole personal enjoyment. But again, if you're having hard times thinking you should watch this movie, I definitely think you guys should check it out. It's definitely something intriguing. You guys have any final thoughts?
I think, we covered the criticism top of mind.
Yeah. I think definitely watch it if you're interested in where Marvel's going. I think it's required viewing at this point.
Yeah, man. I mean, if you like superhero movies in general, I think it's just cool to see a group of people with superpowers just tear it up. So
Yeah, just be patient. X-Men and Fantastic Four are coming, so just enjoy Eternals for now.
yeah, let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Peace.